of the fantasy football season, he has a few defenses and special team units I will add on the wire this week. The first team's the Cincinnati Bengals. So the Bengals, they've been playing great football this season and one of the better teams in all of pro football here now at 5-2 on the season. So right here they had a tough matchup versus Baltimore in week 7 and 17 points allowed, 5 sacks and 3 fourth down stops if you play that in your leagues. And now they got an amazing matchup at the New York Jets in week 8 that give up the most fantasy points to defenses. So right here, this Bengal team, they're pretty much a team you could almost use the rest of the season if they could play ball games like they did in week 7 at Baltimore here. We know they're going to go off at the Jets in week 8 and be a top 5 defense. And then they got another good matchup in week 9 versus the Cleveland Browns as well before they hit the bye week in week 10. So right here, this Cincinnati defense is going to be a hot pickup this week on the waiver wire and a top 5 defense in points for next week as well versus the Jets. So right here, definitely go out there and get them. And they are available in 85% of fantasy leagues. The next defense I would look to is the Seattle Seahawks. So the Seahawks, they haven't been good this season here. And obviously, it's not the Legion of Boom anymore. But they got a great matchup in week 8 versus the Jacksonville Jaguars that give up the 5th most fantasy points to defenses. So right here, I know Trevor Lawrence, he's improved over the last few weeks here. But this offense still makes mistakes. Defenses still can make plays. And right here, Seattle, I know the unit's been bad, but they still got a couple decent players on the defense. Obviously, Bobby Wagner. Obviously, Jamal Adams. And I think in this ball game versus Jacksonville, they can make a few plays here. And they're available in 91% of fantasy leagues. The next defense week's the Philadelphia Eagles. I know this Eagle team, they've been a train wreck on defense this season. But I'm just going on a matchup-based thing here, just for this week 8 matchup here at the Detroit Lions that do give up the 7th most fantasy points to defenses. So right here, it's getting late early for this Philadelphia Eagle team though. 2-5 on the season. They got to start winning ball games, especially with the Dallas Cowboys with a big lead already in the division at 5-1. So right here, Jalen Hurts and this team, they got to get things going. And their defense is the unit that has to get going. And I think in an indoor game at Detroit, they could make a few plays and be a sleeper defense. But right here, they're available in 94% of fantasy leagues. And they're 1 week ahead, though, like I mentioned, because of the great matchup at the Detroit Lions. The next defense is the Tennessee Titans. So the last couple weeks here, very tough matchups it's been for Tennessee. But the defense has held their own, and they just came off 2 great victories, beating the Buffalo Bills, and then blowing out Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. And in that Week 7 matchup versus the Chiefs, only 3 points allowed, 4 sacks, an interception, 2 fumble recoveries, and a 4th down stop. I've never seen Patrick Mahomes and this offense shut down like this. And this Tennessee Titan team, they were really getting after it. They were really getting at the quarterback. And this is the type of defense Mike Vrabel came from when he played the game, obviously, with the New England Patriots. And this is the type of defense he wants to see his Titans play. And right here, they got a good matchup at the Indianapolis Colts. Obviously, a division rival that they do well here. So I think they could get pressure on Carson Wentz. They can make plays. In the last 2 out of 3 ball games, they've had double-digit fantasy days is Tennessee. And they're available in a whopping 94% of fantasy leagues. And the 5th and final defense I've looked at is the Los Angeles Chargers. So the Chargers, they're coming off a bye week. They're freshened up. And they're one of the better teams in all of football, even though they came off a stinker before going on a bye, getting blown out by the Baltimore Ravens. But they got a great matchup, in my opinion, in Week 8 is the Chargers versus the New England Patriots that give up the 7th most fantasy points to defenses. I know the Patriots had a monster ball game, putting up 54 points versus the New York Jets, but that's not going to happen in this ball game versus Justin Herbert and the Chargers. And I think the Chargers here, they could go out there and definitely make plays on Mac Jones. And the main thing for the Chargers is stop the run and make Mac Jones try to beat them, in my opinion. Because this unit, they played pretty decent for fantasy football this season. Obviously, except that Week 6 ball game in Baltimore. But before that, they've been pretty solid. So right here, the Chargers defense is available in 84% of fantasy leagues. And their defense, I would try to get on the wire this week. So that's a few defenses I looked at on the waiver wire for Week 8 of the fantasy football season.